number one, you have to have the address on the assignment agreement as well. You need the legal description again, right? You want to be clear. Let's not make it vague. So get the legal description. We've already covered how to get that legal description. You want the tax assessor's parcel number, the APN, the assessor's parcel number, whatever it is that you want to call it, you're going to need that as well, right? Let's go into the two not contracts, but they are contracts, the two basic documents that every real estate wholesaler needs in order to become successful. And those documents are, starting with number one, the purchase agreement. Okay. The purchase agreement is going to be the single most important contract that you are going to have when you are talking to sellers. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go over what are the most important parts of the purchase agreement. I am not going to go into this whole contract and break it down, number one, because it's probably going to be really boring. And number two, because some of you already have mentors, some of you already have JV partners, some of you are already part of teams. And the last thing that I want to do is to try to convince you to do something or using something else that your team is already using. So this is to supplement them. If you're a part of a team, if you're a part of an organization, I want you to follow exactly what it is that they're doing, and use the contracts that they're using. But what we're going to do is we're going to go over the basics of what goes into the purchase agreement. All right. So let's go into the basics. Number one, you need the address, right? I mean, I know that it sounds like common sense and everybody should already know that you're going to need the address in there, but you want to have the address. You want to have the whole address. So it's 1234 Mockingbird Lane, Los Angeles, California, 90210, right? The full address. Okay. Second thing you're going to want is you're going to want the legal description. Now, where can you find the legal description? Sometimes you can find them on sites like Zillow or Redfin. Sometimes you can find them using tools like Batch Leads, right? That's another tool that you can use. Most of the time you can find them on a property profile. Now, where can you get a property profile? I have talked about you establishing a good relationship with a local title representative in your market, right, for a long time. And I'm going to repeat it again. I want you to Google local title representative near me. I want you to call that local title representative and I want you to say, hey, John or Jane, my name is Paul. I am a real estate investor. I'm going to be working in this area. I Googled you and I see that you're a top title representative in the area. I'd like to see if I can refer you my business and designate you as the title representative for my next purchase. And what do you think they're going to say? They're going to say yes, right? A title rep wants that because they are ensuring the transaction, making sure that there aren't any clouds on title, making sure that all the liens are paid, making sure that title is clear. They're ensuring that deal. And every title policy that they insure, every title policy that they provide, every transaction that they are a part of, they will also earn a commission and income or a salary, however it is structured, right? So by you designating them as your title representative of choice, you are also helping them. They're helping you and you're helping them. Now, that being said, you can call those title reps once you've established that relationship and you can say, hey, John or Jane, listen, it's Paul. I'm thinking about purchasing a property. Can you get me a property profile on such and such property? You give them the address, you text them, you email, however it is that you communicate with them. They give you the property profile. In that property profile will be the exact legal description. Now, can you get by without putting the legal description on the purchase agreement? Sure, you can get by without putting the legal description on it. You can the thing is, the more accurate you are, the better off that you're going to be. And if it's all it is just a simple call to a title representative and saying, hey, can you get me a copy of that title, a property profile on it? Then why not do it, right? Why not take that extra little step just to make sure that your purchase agreement is accurate and so that you get the accurate legal description, okay? Now, the tax assessor's number, or also known as the assessor's parcel number, sometimes those two get interchanged, right? So there's tax assessors numbers, there's assessor's parcel number, APN. Those are all the different acronyms or the different ways of saying the exact same thing. That can also be found on the property profile that you get from your local title representative, but you can also find it on Zillow if you look up parcel number. It's also on Redfin, but again, Redfin isn't in all states, and it is also going to be in tools like batchleads.com. When you pull up one of their reports, you'll be able to find the assessor's parcel number as well. It will also be the legal description usually is also in batchleads.com. So if you're already paying for those services, which I highly, highly recommend, if you don't have batch leads and you'd like to try a 7-day free trial on us and get 50% off your first month, you can go to batch, BATCH, batch.dispodragons.com. Don't confuse the A with the I, batch.dispodragons.com, because then you might end up at a different website. Yeah. All right. Next slide. Price. Okay. Common sense. Okay. Common sense. Price needs to be on there. The earnest money deposit. And we'll talk a little bit about the earnest money deposit, okay? So the earnest money deposit really is whatever you and the seller agree for it to be. There has to be something there as an earnest money deposit in order for the contract to be valid. Consideration, right? Consideration is what makes a contract valid. There has to be some type of an exchange of consideration. In this case, the consideration is money, right? Some type of deposit that you're going to make. Can you do it with $1? Absolutely. Can you do it with $500? Absolutely. Can you do it with $3,000? Absolutely. Can you do it with a diamond ring? Yes, of course you can. That would be considered consideration. You're giving them something of value, right, as the earnest money deposit in exchange for their property. That's what constitutes a contract. So the earnest money deposit is whatever you and the seller agree on. Now, if you are going to be working with an agent, if you're working with a real estate agent, they are going to be using their state-approved contracts. They will be using their forms. And the reason that they're going to be using their forms is because they need to stay in compliance with their broker who employs them, because they fall under the jurisdiction of their state's Department of Real Estate. So real estate agents are going to probably require a much larger deposit than if you were to negotiate directly with the seller. I've heard other teachers, I've heard other people in this space teach that you could get by with a $1 deposit, and you might be able to, but a savvy seller is probably not going to accept that, because again, they're going to want a little bit more money down as the earnest money deposit, a little more skin in the game. Now, real estate agents are typically going to require anywhere between 1 to 3% as the earnest money deposit, depending on the state, right? It will vary from state to state. Some states they want 3%, and some states are a little bit more flexible. They want 1%. So it really just depends. And again, it really depends on your ability to negotiate with the real estate agent. So you can talk to the real estate agent, and you can ask that the real estate agent have a smaller deposit, say maybe $1,000, $500 up front. And then once we conclude all of our inspections, Mr. and Mrs. Real Estate Agent, I can then increase my earnest money deposit to 3%, something along those lines. But the bottom line is your purchase agreement, if you are working directly with the seller, is going to be negotiable. It's negotiable, but there has to be some type of consideration on there. There must be something there. I've seen some people who try to get away with putting zero as the deposit, and for the deposit not to be placed into title or not to be placed into escrow or with the closing attorney until the contract has been assigned. And I think you're skating on thin ice when you do that. I'm putting my phone on vibrate. Sorry. I love it when that happens, and I'm alive. So make sure that your earnest money deposit has something of value there, or you could be potentially run into problems, especially when someone wants to back out or cancel on you. Let's say they get a better offer, and you had your earnest money deposit as zero to be deposited once the contract is assigned. Well, that may give the seller enough ammunition to say, hey, I'm going to move on with the other person, because technically we don't have a contract. There is no real consideration that was provided here. Okay, keep that in mind. Earnest money deposit. Closing sale date. So you're going to have a closing sale date. There has to be an opening and an ending. Has to. I've seen some contracts where people leave the expiration date of the transaction. They just leave it blank. You really can't do it. And then I've seen some that have been too extreme, and they'll put it for like a year. Well, actually, I guess it depends, right? Leaving it blank is more extreme than putting a year. Either way, they're both a little extreme, okay? You're not going to want to tie up a contract for more than 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days, depending on the type of transaction. Now, I understand that with land, it might take a little bit longer because you're going to be working on entitlements and permits and all of that stuff. So land might be a little bit different, but when we're talking about regular, standard bread and butter, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom homes, 30 days, 45 days, maybe 60 days is roughly about the time that you would put as a closing sale date. There has to be some type of an opening and there has to be some type of an ending, or again, you are skating on thin ice and you're putting yourself in a position where the seller can then argue that you don't have a valid contract. The terms. The terms of the deal are also very important. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the terms, really what we're talking about is what kind of transaction is this? Is it an all cash sale transaction? Is this a subject to mortgage sale where you are taking over the mortgage? Is it a seller finance transaction where the seller is acting as the bank and is financing the transaction for you and they're earning an interest and there's a balloon payment? Is it a hybrid where it's a sub to transaction and a seller finance transaction because the seller has equity? So you're buying it sub to, but then there's still equity. So you're making payments to the original mortgage payment, but you're also making payments to the seller as well. Right? So it's a hybrid. Is it an ovation where the seller gives you the authorization, the legal authorization, the limited authorization, but authorization nonetheless to be able to hire and fire a real estate agent at your own expense, potentially make repairs at your own expense so that you can find an end buyer on the market? And all of those are different exit strategies. And all of those terms have to be clarified on the purchase agreement. They have to be spelled out as clearly as possible so that there is no confusion. The more confusion there is, the more vague it is, the more problems you're going to run into. So make sure that you're clear about the terms. Make sure that the seller understands what it is that you're going to be doing. Again, when I'm having conversations with sellers, one of the things that I might say is, hey, John or Jane, listen, I just want you to know that I am going to be looking for my end buyer. You know that I am an investor. You know that I am purchasing this property to fix it and flip it. You know that I do this for profit. So if I find a buyer before we close this transaction, is it okay with you if I work with that buyer so long as you know that you are going to get your price? Is that okay with you, John or Jane? And most of the time they're going to say yes, right? There are very few times where people say, no, that bothers me, because what they're most interested in is, one, your ability to close. And number two, they get the price that you guys agreed upon. What you do to get that buyer, what you do after or what you do during is irrelevant to them, in as much as it's more important to them to make sure that you actually perform and you can get them the price that you agreed to. That's what's most important. Okay. And then signatures. Okay. Signatures is obviously very important. You're going to need to make sure that the sellers sign all of the paperwork. A lot of times people use digital signatures. Whatever digital signatures that you're going to use, you're going to want to send out. Now, in some rare cases, you will have some sellers that don't use digital signatures. They're very old school and they prefer what we call wet signatures, right? Where they sign them by hand with a pen, and you can send you. In that case, what you'll probably have to do is you'll probably have to FedEx the contracts to them. That's one option. Or another thing that we've done in the past is we will find a local FedEx office, a local UPS store, and we will call them, get their fax number, fax the contract over to that local FedEx office, fax the contract over to that UPS office store. They will receive the fax, and then I will call the seller and say, hey, just want to let you know the paperwork is sitting for you at Kinko's office. When you get over there, or here's the address, go over there, pick up the paperwork, please sign it, give it back to the Kinko's FedEx so that they could fax it back to me, and then you can keep the copy for yourselves. So when you run into a situation like that where you've got a seller that is a little old school and they're not very high tech, consider doing something like that, right? Call a local FedEx office, UPS store, fax your paperwork to them, make sure that it's marked clearly where they need to sign, have them sign it there, have them give it back to the person at the store, have that person fax it back to you, and now you've got your paperwork done and you've got all the signatures, okay? Now, I'm going to pause just for a little bit just to let some oxygen get to my brain, because if I don't do that, I'm going to be yawning during the rest of this live, and I don't want to do that. I am also checking out the comments, so if you see me looking up, it is because I am looking at the comments both on YouTube and on Instagram Live. And right now, title did not want to open, seller refused to take. So I'm trying to read exactly what's going on here. Bear with me just one second. For whatever reason, I'm only seeing part of the comments. The CEO, okay, had a title, Texas title. It wasn't known nationwide. Okay. Sorry about that. So I guess what I'm hearing is that you had a title representative, but that title representative wasn't a nationwide title representative, and they weren't able to get you whatever information you needed for your property. That can happen, right? Not all title companies are nationwide. Not all title companies are operating in all 50 states. So it's a good idea to find one local to where that deal is, right? Find a title representative local to where that deal is, because your local title representative to where you live, especially if you're doing this virtual, may not have access to nationwide records. Okay, so we just covered the basics of the purchase agreement. Let's move on now. Let's talk about the assignment agreement, okay? So the purchase agreement is essentially how you get the property under contract. Congratulations, you've got a deal. But seller has signed, you have signed. It's what we call fully executed, which means everybody signed it. Why they use the term executed, I don't know. Sounds a little morbid, but that's what it is. So fully executed contract. Next thing that you're going to do, if you are going to assign it, is you're going to need an assignment agreement, okay? Now, again, what I practice and what I teach and what I talk to everybody about doing is changing the mindset so that you are an investor first, and you're looking at this opportunity as if you are the investor and as if you are going to be purchasing it. And if it doesn't meet your criteria, for whatever reason, you decide to assign it for profit, then you use this assignment agreement, okay? And I've said it before, some of the best investors are also some of the best wholesalers because they are in the trenches, they are out on the field, they are prospecting regularly, they are looking at deals every day, and then what they do is they decide which opportunities they're going to keep for themselves. They want to buy and hold for themselves, or fix and flip for themselves, or Airbnb for themselves, or pad split for themselves, or co-living for themselves, or whatever it is that they're going to do for themselves. They take those opportunities for themselves, and then the ones that they don't want, they add an assignment fee on top, and then they assign it to an end buyer. Let's talk about the basics that need to be on an assignment agreement. Number one, again, the address. Okay, I know. It seems like common sense, but it's not. I've seen people make these mistakes. Number one, you have to have the address on the assignment agreement as well. You need the legal description again, right? You want to be clear. Let's not make it vague. So get the legal description. We've already covered how to get that legal description. You want the tax assessor's parcel number, the APN, the assessor's parcel number, whatever it is that you want to call it, you're going to need that as well, right? And I talked about how you can get that too. You want to reference the original contract. So the assignment agreement has to reference the original contract that you have with the seller. So it's going to say the original contract for property address dated, which was the date that contract was executed between, right, seller's original name and then your name. All right. So you have to reference the original contract, or the two aren't associated with one another. And if the two aren't associated with one another, then you're not really assigning the contract, and the buyer cannot assume the responsibility or take on the responsibility of closing that deal for you, okay, or for themselves. Identifies, I said identifies, I left that part blank. Identifies this original seller, identifies you as the original buyer, identifies the new end buyer who is going to be purchasing the property. And in that same contract, it identifies you as the assignor. When you are assigning the contract to another buyer, you are the assignor, and the new buyer is actually the assignee, okay? So you want to make sure that you identify all of these things on that contract, on that assignment agreement, so there is zero confusion between who everybody is with relation to this deal, okay? It's very important that it identifies that and that it says that. So it references the original contract, right? The original contract dated and the date that it was executed, and then it references the original seller. It references you as the original buyer, and it references you now as the assignor, who is going to assign that contract to the new end buyer, who is the assignee. All of that stuff should be on there, okay? Now, it also should talk about the earnest money deposit. Now, remember that your earnest money deposit is your earnest money deposit that you've negotiated with the seller. So whatever it is that you've negotiated, whether it be $1 or whether it be $5,000, that's your earnest money deposit that was negotiated with them. Now you're going to negotiate a new earnest money deposit with the assignee, With the buyer, the person that is going to be purchasing the opportunity, purchasing the deal, the buyer that you are going to be assigning the contract to, you're going to ask them to make their own earnest money deposit in title as well. You are still obligated to make your earnest money deposit, because if you do not make your earnest money deposit with the original contract with the seller, you are in breach of contract, and the seller then does have the right to cancel the contract. Okay, keep that in mind. So with the buyer, you can, just because your earnest money deposit with the seller was like $500, doesn't mean that you can't request a $2,500 or a $3,000 earnest money deposit from the buyer. Okay, you can do that. All right. So you have to stipulate what the earnest money deposit is going to be. A closing date, again, you need to stipulate a closing date. In my opinion, a best practice is to have the closing date be at least 7 days before the original closing date that you negotiated with the seller, because remember, there's still a original contract. So what you want to do is whatever closing date you had with the original contract, when it comes to assigning it to an end buyer, you want them to understand that they are required to close at least 7 days before you're supposed to close with the seller. Okay, now why do you want to do that? Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, investors, buyers, they're notorious for asking for extensions. Okay, notorious. It happens all the time. Okay, I'm actually shocked when a investor or a buyer closes early. Okay, so you want to do this by you setting the tone and requiring that they close at least 7 days before the actual expiration of your contract with the original seller. What it does is it gives you a little bit of a buffer in the event that they do ask for an extension. Now, let's say that they ask for a 14-day extension. Now your back's up against the wall. What you will have to then do is you have to go back to the original seller, and you will have to ask the original seller for an additional extension as well. And so when a buyer says, hey, I need another 7 days extension, you're going to go back and you're going to ask the seller for another 14-day extension, right? You're going to give yourself a little bit of padding, because you already know that most of the time buyers and investors don't close on time. When you have an investor or a buyer that closes early or on time with you, you take care of that buyer or that investor, because that is a good client to have, right? Good buyer. So closing sale date. And on the assignment agreement, you do not want to have, or you want language in there that states contract cannot be reassigned. The contract cannot be reassigned. So what that does is it puts the buyer, the assignee, on notice now that the buyer cannot go out there and shop that contract around themselves. They can't wholesale that contract themselves. They are going to be the end buyer. They have to be the ones that perform. And look, at that point, that buyer can then decide, well, I'm not going to sign this. I'll just cancel, and that's fine. Now you know you're dealing with somebody else who is not going to close on this property, who is not going to perform on this property, or they're what we like to call a daisy chainer in this business, where they're just taking other opportunities and they're trying to sell it to other people, right? To other buyers, and adding their fee on top as well. Okay, so these are all the things that should be on there. When you are assigning the contract to the end buyer, it isn't uncommon for the end buyer to ask for a copy of the underlying contract between you and the seller. What does that mean? That means that they may ask for the original contract that you signed with the seller. Now, with that contract, you can redact, you can black out any pertinent information that has anything to do with price. So you can block out the price, you can block out the earnest money deposit, and you can block out any contact information that you may have left on that contract with the seller. Keep that in mind. I've noticed that some digital signatures, right, including Adobe and a few other ones, for whatever reason, and they will include a certificate of, I guess you could call it, of authenticity at the end of a digital signature, or a contract that's been signed by all parties digitally, as to authenticate that it is a valid document, which is fine. But a lot of times those certificate of authenticities, they actually have the contact information and the email addresses of the people who have signed it. And so, when you send that out, then what that does is it puts everybody in a position where they can all start communicating with one another, and that can create problems. Okay, so just food for thought. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, going back to what I said earlier, if the buyer asks for a copy of the original contract between you and the seller, you want to redact any personal information. You want to redact or black out any of your price and your earnest money deposit, and make sure that when you send it to them, that stuff is blacked out, so so that, they don't need to see any of that stuff, okay? So then you send it to them and you send it with the assignment agreement. Why? Because the assignment agreement, as we mentioned earlier, references the original contract. The buyer needs to know what it is that they're assuming, needs to know what it is that they're taking on. What are they taking on if they're going to be purchasing the property? And that's all stipulated in the original agreement that you negotiated with the seller. Okay, so those are the two documents that you are going to need to know in order to be successful as a real estate wholesaler. You've got the purchase agreement, and then you've got the assignment agreement, right? Now, remember, when you're working with an agent, you are I would say 99% of the time, not going to be able to use your purchase agreement. You're going to be using their state association of realtor purchase agreement, but you can add your addendums, you can add your addenda, you can add your contracts to that agreement. You just have to get the real estate agent on board. You have to explain, hey, I need my paperwork attached to your state forms as well. Some of them will do it, some of them won't. Again, it all depends on your ability to negotiate and your ability to explain why you need your paperwork there. But most agents are going to want everything on the state approved forms because they have to maintain they have to stay in compliance with their local state's Department of Real Estate. All right. So hopefully this helps you out. Hopefully it's kind of a boring topic, right? Everybody wants to watch the videos and the TikToks and the shorts and the reels about how, a 12-year-old brought me a deal and made like $10,000. Everybody wants to see all that stuff. But at the end of the day, somebody DM'd me, and I've been seeing a lot more posts about, the contracts and how they're having challenges either finding contracts or locating contracts or understanding the contracts. And hopefully this made it a little bit easier. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. If you have issues with contracts and you need a mentor or you need a JV partner, go to start.dispodragons.com. We have a profit sharing mentorship where the mentor has an incentive to help you because, yes, they are earning a share of the profits, as are you, right? As are you. But this way you have someone actually hand-holding you and walking you through the exact process where you get to shadow them as they help you close your leads, help you fill out contracts, help you close those leads, close those sellers, help you close those deals, help you find buyers. And you just watch throughout the entire process as they do all the heavy lifting, all the talking, all the closing, all the delegating. They do all of that stuff, right? And you get to watch in real time as it happens, and then you get paid. Right? That's the beauty of what it is that we do with our profit sharing mentorship. So go to start.dispodragons.com. Again, if you are not subscribed to us, please like and follow. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you did see some value to it. Make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube so that way you can get alerted every time we go live and every time we upload new content that we are creating and curating for you. If you find yourself in a deal right now, you might be locked up in a deal. You don't know what to do. You're having issues finding a buyer. You're not sure if you structured it right. Give us a thank you for that. Army can't print this one. Nothing. I appreciate the comment about my camel hats. Those I love camel. Something about camel. Anyway, and not camel, CAMEL, not camel like with the two humps. I'm talking about camo, like camouflage. And I'm also starting to really feel like the hunting camo. Like I'm really into that right now, and the browns and the oranges. Anyway, I digress. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you follow so that you can get all the alerts, all the contents. If you're in a deal and you need help with it, you need help restructuring it, you need help renegotiating, you need help comping a deal, you need help understanding a deal, you're not sure what to do, send us a DM. We'll take a look at it. We can hop on a Zoom call together and we can take a look at how we can help you out. And if we can't, we'll tell you. And if there's a way to save that deal, we'll let you know right away too. And let's see if we can restructure it together. All right. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching this video. Again, please subscribe.